welcome to episode 68 of the Tyre and Rubber Recycling podcast. Before we begin, please like and subscribe to this video. Every like and every subscription helps boost the channel. In today's podcast, we are meeting with Darren Lindsey, the Chief Executive of the British Tyre Manufacturers Association. I think this is going to be an interesting one. Let's get on with it. So welcome, Darren Lindsey from the BTRMA. Can we jump straight in? And can I ask you, what are the BTRMA thoughts on the end-of-life tyres in the UK? Do we handle them effectively?
Well, good morning, Ewan, first and foremost. It's good to join you on the podcast this morning. It's a question that's been asked a number of times. There's not one clear answer here, but I think to sort of summarize it up and kind of give you some food for thought, it's like a lot of things. A lot of these issues at the moment could be improved. And what I mean by that is that it depends what you focus on. If you take the sustainability angle, that's one area. Compliance when it comes to regulations, another area. And the thing that bugs me most is the opportunities we miss when it comes to improving outcomes from recycling. And I think that's the part where we could do so much more and see significant improvement here in the UK. But just to remind people, the UK generates about 600,000 tonnes of waste annually. It's a big number. To put that into perspective, the Republic of Ireland, who had the latest EPR scheme, probably produced about a tenth of that. So the scale of economies are certainly, we have a tailwind there, which is working substantially for ourselves. But the other thing as well is what does success look like? Do we handle it effectively? I'm sorry to say, but a great number of waste products from the UK with regards to tyres get exported. And the outcomes of these, we're not really 100% sure of where they go. In fact, we know where they go, but what happens to them when they arrive? And I'm sure that's a question you will ask me later on for sure. It's an interesting one. But when I talked about opportunities as well, it pains me to think that we're missing out on all these areas where we've underdeveloped or not invested over the years in terms of better outcomes for the UK markets. But I should also give it a slight tap on the back there as well, because we do have some strict regulations in place that other countries don't. And one of them is we obviously banned tyres to landfill a number of years ago. Not all countries do that. So that was a significant step. But in brief, effectively, no, I don't think we do. There's always room for improvement in that area.
We currently see possibly over 50% of the UK's waste tyres being shipped to India and other overseas markets. Is this environmentally sound, and is it sustainable for the UK tyre sector?
Okay, I think the best thing to do is to put this into perspective. We have for a number of years now in the UK been exporting around 50% of our waste to other countries, predominantly India. And you've got to ask yourself why? Why do we do such a thing if we could perhaps use that waste more responsibly in our country? And I suppose what's happening here is that we really don't have the transparency regarding where these tyres end up and how they're processed. And I would say at the moment this is probably going to come back and bite us at some point, because don't get me wrong, India themselves will put in place measures to prevent this from happening eventually. And when it does, it's an avenue that will be cut off to the UK in terms of where waste is sent. And the cycle starts again. The boats turn around basically in the water, and we have the issue back on our own shores. So we do need other outlets to get rid of our waste, but it has to be done responsibly. And we have to think about the impact that it's obviously having on the environment. And not just that, but think about the environmental impact of the shipping costs, not so much the cost, but these ships going from one side of the the world to another to take our waste somewhere else. It's the impact of that and the carbon emissions which gets forgotten. But it's not a sustainable process that we currently have in place at the moment. It's a race to the bottom, and it will change that tide. So the only thing that we can do about that, certainly in the UK, is to try and find better local outcomes for waste tyres. But how we do that is going to be the challenging question with what we have currently as a free market system.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've seen some some recent developments. A number of recyclers have said that they cannot get the feedstock to meet the conditions of contracts. Um, and Murfitts is one of those. They haven't complained, but they've taken things into their own hands because as part of the Ethyl group, they're using Stapletons to pick up tires, and that has been disruptive in the market for a number of the collectors and recyclers. And it may be that we have some large recyclers in the UK are going to have to partner up with the tire industry to make sure they get the feedstock they need. Anyway, um, would greater cooperation between industry bodies help address end of life management by helping create a more accurate understanding of volumes?
Um, Absolutely, and there's been some progress here, Ewan. I've been in the post now just 6 months, and I was somewhat astonished to find the lack of transparency as an industry we have when it comes to making these calculations. Data is key here. It's what's going to drive outcomes. It's having accurate data. And you're spot on there. This can only come through the collaboration of the various associations in this sector. And relationships are good, they're strong there, but we've been left behind a little bit in somewhat how that data is collected and how accurate it is. And I'm I'm just saying that there's better ways out there that it can be done. And we've been asking some difficult questions of people. And I think we've found a solution which is certainly going to challenge the current method that's used to work out that figure I mentioned at the start about the 600,000 tons of waste. And it's partnering with companies that do this on a regular basis for other industries and looking at it from a different point of view in terms of working out the number of tires per vehicle, etc., multiplying it by whatever. They're looking at things differently by looking at the kilometers driven as well. So you can look at it from both ends to see, are you coming up with a similar sort of figure and is it robust? My only pushback to anything like this, when you start to measure something more accurately, guess what happens? You don't often like the answer you see. And that may happen. The first pass is that we get an answer that we don't like. I'd like to think that that is at least consistent. And if it's wrong, it's consistently wrong, but we're using a method that's got more rigor to it as an industry and we're being more transparent. So I would like to say going forward, we would have better outcomes in terms of the data that's collected on behalf of this industry, purely through the better collaboration and using better methods out there to sort of triangulate that approach.
Okay. Is this something that GDSO will have an impact on?
Um, to a point, yes, yes. We can't work without them, and I think everyone collectively needs to come to the party. This information in the past, there was a strong input, shall we say, from various government departments, and rightly so as well. So I don't see any change there. I just think that what's going to happen now, we're going to have more accurate data to have more grown-up conversations about what is really happening in the UK about the amount of waste that's being produced.
Okay. No. At the Tyre Recovery Association forum, you brought up the subject, excuse me, EPR and stewardship schemes around the world have put millions of pounds into research and development and funding the establishment of modern tyre recycling sectors. The UK has not seen similar investments because the recovery fee is split essentially between the retailer and the collector. So the money raised from tires isn't going back into the industry, as it were. Is there a need to look at how the UK handles its end of life tires? Is it time to consider EPR?
Well, I will pick up on a point you've mentioned there, Ewan, is you're very sharp. And yes, I did say that at the TRA conference, but I didn't answer the question on purpose. So I don't mind picking it up here with yourself because it's a big topic, it's a big discussion. And what it really is pinned down by is alignment of the industry in terms of where this could go as a subject, and it's been opened a few times. It's like a wound that we constantly open, and people are kind of like reluctant to change. Some other people told me as well, it's not a matter of if, but when an EPR scheme comes to the UK. But there's a couple of things to challenge that. If you think about it, there's only two large countries in Europe that don't operate an EPR scheme, and it's two of the biggest, and that is the UK and Germany. Why is that? That's one of the questions. I'm not going to answer it here today, but that's something that it's at the back of my mind. Two of the biggest markets currently operate a free market type system. What I'm certainly trying to do, and working with Peter at the TRA and Stefan at the NTDA, we're being very transparent with each other because we are being told by a government that an EPR scheme or a consultation for an EPR scheme is under consideration for our industry. And it was a commitment from the old government, but obviously we've had a new government since. Whether it stands, we don't know. But the old government said by the end of 2025, our consultation for EPR for tyres will be considered again. And I was talking to them recently about this, and they've just said to me, where do you stand as an industry? If you're able to ready yourself and get alignment, something like this could pass quite quickly. I'm not all for about things passing quickly. It's what's right for the industry here. And I've been saying to Peter at the TRA, whether we call it an EPR scheme or whatever, or it's a hybrid, is whatever's right for the UK industry at the moment. And I think we just have to look at what currently works with what we have. And I like the point that you made there, and I think I raised it as well. I personally think the money sits in the wrong hands as it starts. And I think the responsibility for the waste management should be put back into the hands of the producers, those that create it. And by doing so, you obviously create a centralized fund that can be reallocated towards research, recycling, and any other infrastructure type based projects that may be out there. At the moment, we don't have that, and therefore we've had lack of investment and we've missed opportunities in the recycling sector because it's been fragmented. The funds have sat in the hands of many, and it's the many at the collectors' side in terms of the distribution. And they're not able to consolidate that into one fund. And that is where you miss the biggest opportunity. So if we can sort of capture a method of doing that from their side and they become the bank, then great. But I don't see that happening too quickly. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits that could come from the EPR scheme. The other thing we should be very careful of, a lot of people are pushing back to me, and I've been out there speaking to the various partners involved in this process. Nobody likes being told what to do. And we always think it's waving of the finger at the top from an EPR scheme telling you who's going to get the contracts, what you're going to do, etc. There's got to be an element of having structure and process in there because we don't have that today. And hence, as you said at the start, I'm not getting enough product coming through my premises to keep the lights on. I can't get the feedstock to do this. And that is partly because we're not managing our arisings by having a regulated type-based scheme. It's a free market. If we had that, we could put contracts in place to get those volumes. If you get those volumes, people will then invest in the plant and machinery to create the better outcomes. So we've got to ask ourselves, what is it we want? What do we want in the UK at the end of the day here? I'd like to think we have to act responsibly. And the days have gone now in terms of Even the word sustainability, there's opportunities that come from it. It's not a matter of a cost. In the past, if everything's sustainable, the greenwashing came with a cost. Whereas sustainability now, there is ways out there that you can actually improve the market that you function and operate in. And the other thing as well is this amount of volume that goes to export. If we had something in this country that rewarded for better outcomes, we would see those investments and we would be exporting far less product overseas and we'd be taking care of our own waste far more responsibly than we do today. So yeah, it's a great subject. It's not going to be an easy one to get alignment in the industry. I've said to my colleagues Peter and Stefan at the respective associations, it's not that we're going to fall out about it. It's just that so much at stake for the different stakeholders, and nobody likes change. But we just need to be very transparent with each other and find something that's going to benefit and be fit for purpose for the UK.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have seen, and the tire manufacturers themselves have seen that the for want of a better description, the knee-jerk reaction of creating an EPR scheme to meet the needs of a particular country uh, isn't always the best way to go. Um, France has had to review its scheme to make it competitive. Italy has had to do the same. But that competitiveness in Italy has actually created other problems because they've lost that transparency they need.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, okay, I thank you very much for those thoughts. One last question.
Sure.
How might you see opportunities for recycled materials in new tires and rubber goods being developed in the UK?
Oh, it's a good one, this. It kind of goes back to what we've just discussed there about having the right funding in place to be able to support this. And you're probably talking more about this. I wouldn't call it the elephant in the room, but people think it's the holy grail that's going to solve all our problems, pyrolysis and devulcanization, etc. These are important areas for the industry in terms of we are being innovative. I'm not aware of many pyrolysis type based organizations that have got to a commercial scale yet. And we should as well also be very mindful that there's still only a small percentage of, shall we say, the tire derived rubber or the oils, etc., from that process that can go back into a new tire. But that's just the tire element, and the industry will work and find those solutions. I used to have an old boss that used to always say, if you've got problems, give the problems to the industry. They will find the solutions. And I echo this to government. Government won't find the solutions, industry will. And certainly there's a dollar there at the end of the rainbow, shall we say. So I think from that front there on the pyrolysis side, there is opportunity. The challenge is going to be is where's that investment going to come from? And I also think as well, the manufacturers, our members, will not sit back either. There'll be a lot of alignment or trying to find and establish partnerships with people that are able to get that stock. Because like everything else, you've got to make sure that conveyor belt is constantly turned on and the product is coming through at a regular flow at a cost that makes this affordable for the industry. But certainly, yes, it's definitely an avenue that we need to try and investigate further. And it goes beyond that as well. You know, if we have to be responsible about our own waste, you can't just have one stream or one waste stream to be able to do that. There is effects in the market if energy costs go up and that a tire has a high calorific value and therefore off it goes round the world and it gets burnt, whether it's cement kilns, etc. You need to find more outlets, and we're certainly trying to do that an industry, but do it responsibly and also the respect for the environment. And the one that I still think that we must try harder in is roads. And I was saying this just to National Highways a couple of weeks ago. Everybody's trying to get rid of their waste in roads. That's what I was told by National Highways. Everyone wants to put their waste, whether it's plastics, etc. I had to push back to them and say, I think we have a legitimate position here, though. Roads would not exist without tyres. Vehicles would not move. we kind of are part of the same family, and therefore we should work with each other to see how we can recycle at the end of the day our respective products, whether it's the roads being recycled or it's the tyres going back into roads to make them safer, quieter, and better for the environment as well in the long term, being responsible about it. So I'm all for these outcomes. There's not just one. There's got to be multiple levers that we can pull when the market is impacted by various dynamics.
Yeah, it's the asphalt's a challenging one because who is going to build these roads that are going to take away future business? But I think it needs a bit of leverage from the top on that one. I
Yeah, the rubberized asphalt is, you've got to remember you're dealing with road builders, you're dealing with chemical companies. It's a substitute. Something has to come out for something
Yeah,
to go
yeah,
in. And that is the challenge you got. So we have to come at it from a sustainability point of view, from a safety point of view, noise pollution, and these discussions are underway. But I'm adamant that we will find the right area to do such a thing that works for all parties.
yeah. I'm sure we'll get there in the end. I mean, the Italians have just introduced a mandate that to use rubberized asphalt, and I think Spain has, and they're campaigning for it in Germany as well. So the, the there's a change coming through the industry everywhere. We just sometimes tend to be tail end of the change, I think.
Mm. You know, one thing I haven't mentioned, Ewan, and I should as well, is that industry will find a lot of the solutions, but like many things, we do need to be incentivized at times. And if we have a government that generally does believe that we can add to the sustainability agenda, that there's got to be government incentives for the industry to make this transformation, to make this change in investments, if it ticks that sort of green agenda. And government can always do more. It doesn't help when government's constantly changing. But as I say, we can't rely on them totally. But please, if they're listening, and we've got some very good friends in government there as well, is do lean into this conversation more. This is a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, we need that greenhouse, no pun intended. We need that greenhouse environment to help develop the industry.
I would agree.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and thank you for some, I think, very frank answers.
No
Uh,
problem at all, Ewan. And as I say, we're here whenever and always happy to come on the podcast and share our views and thoughts.
Thank you very much.
You're
Okay.
welcome. Thank you.
Well, there we have it. I think that was a very interesting and very open and frank discussion with Darren Lindsey, giving a view of the tyre recycling sector in the UK from a different perspective. Um, I think we're going to hear more about potential changes in the coming months and years. We will talk to Darren again, I'm quite sure. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being with us. And before we go again, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will see you shortly for podcast 69. Thank you.